On the 28th of March 2019, I tackled the subject of change. I did this on my phone, relaxed, as I would usually do back then. It's before this YouTube channel even came about, but it was in preparation for this YouTube channel, right? But looking back, I see that there's some points that I made which are valid and some that I'd like to challenge based on the developments that have transpired over time, some of the lessons and experiences that I've learned from, right? So I want to demystify, I want to critique, I want to also learn from my old self, my young self, my optimistic self, the self that actually believed that with every bone in my body, that what I was saying was actually right, relevant, and true. So walk with me on this journey and enjoy the conversation, if I can call it that, between my younger self and myself right now.
Today, let's get into the subject that is, one of the constants of life. I think we've all heard about this saying that talks of there are two constants in life: death and change.
Okay, so let's pause it right there, dude. Let's pause it right there. I know that you probably would have read it somewhere. I probably would have read it somewhere to say there are two constants in life: death and change. But in truth, in actuality, there are way more than just two constants in life. There are a lot more constants in life. But the most popular saying that I was probably trying to refer to is Stephen Covey's saying, where he says there are three constants in life, right? Change, choice, and principle. That's probably the one I was trying to refer to.
So let's talk about change rather than death, right? Who wants to talk about death so early in the morning on a bright new day?
But I like my optimism now, where I shift the conversation to speak about change and death, and who wants to actually listen to talk about death so early in a bright new. Oh boy, I love that. I love that confidence. Let's carry on.
Let's talk about change. Change is inevitable. Hence, it's a constant. There's nothing we can do about it. The question that arises, though, is what do you do? Because there are different types of change, first and foremost. So that's what I'll talk about, the different types of change, but with a focus on one particular one. But also, over and above that, I'd like to touch on change and how you can adapt to change, but how you can also lead the change. So the first type of change I want to talk about is change that relates to accumulative change. So change that happens over time.
I think what I meant to say there was prolonged change or incremental change, right? But I'm interested to hear what I had to say about it being dangerous. Why incremental change can be dangerous? Let's hear what my train of thought was all about there.
And sometimes that type of change is dangerous in the sense that we don't even notice some of the fluidity that happens as life transpires and as time goes by. So we go into a particular habit, right? And then as we get into that habit, there are certain things that speak to the consequences of that habit that we may not have foreseen, So you get into the habit of stopping to exercise, for example. Over time, the consequences will show only over an elongated amount of time or an elongated period of time, versus if you were to continue exercising with that goal of, I want to see a change that is, positive. So there's the positive and negative side. The positive side would be that you'd exercise with a goal in mind of having lost so much weight, having maintained so much body fat, having retained so much water in the body, having increased the level of energy that is in your body, those type of things. Those are positive things that speak to habits that build change, positive change. But negative change will be the contrary, where now the opposite effects of not exercising constantly would take place, right? And then there's the second type of change, which is disruptive change.
Okay, hold on. Before we actually get to the topic of disruptive change, I have some commentary on what I was saying there, right? Okay, I get it. when I was saying that incremental change or accumulative change can be dangerous at that point in time, I understand that I was referring to the negative side of, the incremental changes that happen. And the example that I used there of gaining weight, not maintaining your body, the consequences just build up, the implications just build up. And then by the time you wake up, you're at a point where you actually need to make that particular change. But I think my choice of words in terms of saying it's dangerous, and for me to actually not speak as if I'm in support of this type of change, was actually where the fallacy was. And I'll let you know as the video progresses what I mean by that, right?
So disruptive change is a type of change that comes about as a result of a particular circumstance or a particular situation. And that type of change is good as well. In fact, I think it's very good depending on the perspective and what actually causes the change. I'd say it plays more in the realm of it being good, because disruptive change disrupts usually the negative things that are in our lives. So it could be partnerships, could be friendships, could be relationships, it could be a lack of focus, but there's this particular thing that sparks, or what's the term? It triggers. There's a particular thing that triggers that particular change in you, and immediately there's nothing you can do except act upon it. So you can't ignore it. You literally have to act upon it, and that's what disruptive change is all about, right? But how does one adapt to disruptive change?
Hang on, young me, hang on. Before we actually speak about the adaptation of disruptive change, I think you need to give, I should have given a lot more context. I should have given a lot more context in terms of disruptive change and why I actually saw it as good at that point in time. Because, I speak about negative things, but I'm saying that disruptive change is good, right? Of course, it may be good under certain circumstances, it may be good. But now when you're looking at reality, our present reality, the reality that this 𝐿𝐿𝐜𝐜 knew nothing about, the reality of COVID-19. COVID-19 was a disruptive change. And to the extent that it was a globally disruptive change. COVID-19 disturbed or disrupted how we live. It transformed how we live, how we socialize, how we love, how we mourn, how we grieve, how we cry, And that's not a good thing, It also sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of misinformation, a lot of concerns, and a lot of other types of viewpoints that are contrary to what governments present, that are contrary to what conspiracy theorists present. So this type of disruption is not necessarily a good thing. So for me, 2 years later, I wouldn't be privy to this knowledge. But for me to just stand there and say, disruptive change is good, it's good, it has a place, Oh yeah, I did actually say depends on the circumstances and how you view it. I had a point.
But how does one adapt to disruptive change? Because it's the one I favor above, just the gradual change. Because disruptive change, it disrupts your train of thought to the extent that you get to think quicker. You get to analyze the situation that caused you to change in the first place, and you actually get to take action, quick action, forced action. That's what disruptive change does. And in business, change is quite familiar, because in business, you'll find that all the types of businesses that come out with a disruptive nature and innovative ability, or the ability to come up with initiatives that change the business landscape, those are called disruptions in a particular sector or industry. And that's why disruptive change is good, because it brings about a particular way of looking at things. It brings about a particular swift change in how society operates. Look at, your big tech companies, your Google, look at your Apple, look at, they came up with ways to disrupt the markets. And that's why the technological space is where it is today, because of that change that they brought about, and people either had to adapt or they had to fall off. Look at BlackBerry, you look at, Samsungs that have to basically iterate what other businesses are doing. You look at a multitude of businesses, and then you see that change is good from a disruptive point of view. But of course, there's also change that speaks to an emotional type of disruptive change, and sometimes that can go in the contrasting direction. But of course, it depends on you and how you actually view it. As I always emphasize, everything depends on how you view it. So sometimes you can have a fallout with a friend, you can have a fallout with a business partner, you can have a fallout with a loved one in your personal, intimate relationship, you can have a fallout with a family member. And when that happens, you sit and you analyze, and in your analytical space, you get to discover, well, what are some of the things that led to this particular change?
So here's another interesting thing. When I was doing this video, I knew nothing about what was to come. And I mentioned points like fallouts with your business partner. I mentioned points like fallouts in friendships. Little did I know that I was manifesting it to a certain extent, but that's a story for another day. I just thought I should just share that I was manifesting without actually being aware. And that's the power of manifestation as well, yeah?
So it's a combination of disruptive but also accumulative, because in your assessment, you get to actually assess some of the things and you evaluate some of the changes that were happening gradually till that trigger of disruption happened. Now, in a situation where the change needs to happen and is forced, then you as an individual, you get into that peculiar position where you find out how overwhelming change can be, right?
Now here you'd think that I was a bit of a psychic because I was speaking about how overwhelming, in fact, I'm introducing the subject of how overwhelming change can be, right? And little did I know back then that we'll be overcome with COVID-19 as a society, as a world, and we need to actually adapt, because indeed change in this particular respect was pretty overwhelming. Like, it was a hell of a load, right?
Change is overwhelming because, for one, change is usually new. And anything that is new, we fear, because we have a fear of the unknown, right? So change is overwhelming. Change, number two, needs to be accepted. You need to accept that it's a constant of life, and it will come whether you are prepared for it or whether you want it or not. But the best thing is for you to be prepared, of course, and also change is necessary. So when it comes, as overwhelming as it is, as challenging as it may seem at the time, take it in your stride, accept it, follow your heart in that particular point in time, while analyzing all the circumstances around you. It will lead you into a positive space that will then take you to, to pivot. It will take you to pivot, to get to the next level. That's why it's there, that's why it happens, and that's why it's necessary. So change, I welcome you. Change, I know my listeners welcome you. Change, we aren't afraid of you. Change, we want to be your friend. So we want to adapt to you, but we also want to lead you.
Okay, I like that. Guys, one thing you need to understand is that, I've been this positive, optimistic person for a pretty long time, right? So now my message to the subject matter of change, I like that. I love it. It ignites a certain energy in me just watching it, right? Change, we welcome you. Change, we're not afraid of you. Oh my God, that mentality that I had 2 years ago has only evolved. It has only intricately become better. I've manifested a lot of things as a result of welcoming the change that has come in my life. So I'm so glad that even at that stage in my life 2 years ago, not being privy to all the things that were to come, I'm so happy with the fact that I was ready to take on the world. I was ready to not be afraid of change. I was ready to collaborate, adapt, learn, just change things and be prepared to actually comprehend and understand subject matters a little better than I would have, prior to that, or prior having that particular understanding. But boy, I love this energy.
Adapt to you earlier on, but want to lead you. So change, we're unafraid of you. We're willing to
Yeah.
walk the journey with you. Because think about it.
Yeah.
You started off not being able to even sit on your butt.
Okay, don't mind the language. Mind the language. You started off sitting on your bottom. You started off sitting on your bottom. Okay.
Then you started crawling. Then you started walking. Then you started running, and you never stopped. Now, it may not be you running physically, but your mind is running, your dreams are running, your drive is running. And that's all has been a transition, a change throughout your entire throughout your entire lifetime, and it's going to continue happening. So whatever negative situation, whatever bad situation you may feel you are in right now, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, change will come.
Whatever bad situation
Change will come. Just
right
be
now,
ready
change will
for it.
come,
Prepare
yeah.
for it. Read upon it, be focused in relation to it, and just work on it. Work on it and work on it. Peace out, guys. But if there's one thing that I don't want to change, I don't want you guys to stop listening to my videos. Cheers.
Okay, it's true. If there's one thing that I don't want changing, is you guys stopping to listen to the content and the videos that I put out there. So basically, that positive energy that has been drawn from my younger self to my current self really inspires me, right? And if there's another change or proviso that I'd like to put forth, is to say future videos. Come on, join me. Let me share with you what's in my medulla oblongata. Let me share with you the messages that can basically change and transform the way you think, if applied, of course. So you need to take a piece of responsibility to it, right? But just walk with me on this journey and just present the concept of being inspired to start. No matter what it is that you want to start, be that change that you want to see in your world prior to being the change that you want to see in the actual world, right? So don't forget, it starts with you. Subscribe, like, follow, share, all of the above. I look forward to the next one. But thank you for listening, guys. And I learned a lot from myself. The energy, I'm ignited. Cheers, guys.